This time on Engine Masters, we're gonna show you how to verify your camshaft and probably pick up a little power for free. As in no simoleons, no dollars, no euros, no pesos, zero zilch nada, free. Here we go. First, I'm gonna tell you about what we're gonna do in this test, and then I will fill you in on this excellent engine package. So what we're gonna do is called lash loops. This applies to anything with a solid cam, whether it's a roller or a flat tappet. And in fact, it applies to overhead cams or anything that has a solid cam with lash. So let's talk about what is lash. It is the distance between the end of the rocker arm and the top of the valve. So just to inform some of you who may not be completely up to speed on all this, what we're looking at is a push rod here that's acting on a roller lifter and a camshaft. So this push rod goes up and down. The rocker arm, guess what? It rocks back and forth like this to open the valve. And of course, the valve spring then closes the valve. So that's how this all operates. But then that lash there is required because with a solid, or let's call it mechanical camshaft, you need a little bit of play there because otherwise, as the engine heats up and cools down, it'll end up breaking parts or hanging a valve open or something like that. The good news is we can use lash for tuning. That's because if there is less lash, it tends to add just a hair of camshaft duration. If there's more lash, it actually takes away a little bit of camshaft duration. The relationship of valve lift is directly proportional to lash. If you tighten up your lash by 10 thousandths of an inch, you just picked up 10 thousandths of an inch of valve lift as well. So what we're gonna do in this test is go through and first take the intake valve and adjust the lash smaller and then larger. And then we're gonna do the same thing on the exhaust side, smaller and then larger. And we're gonna look at our power curves and figure out which one is better. Now, this can give you a clue as to your camshaft performance. If you really like looser lash, it tells you you might have picked a camshaft with too much duration because the looser lash is gonna reduce that duration. And this will be very clear to you as we go through the dyno steps. So let's tell you about the engine combination here. And if you followed Engine Masters at all, you know this pooch because it's pretty awesome and we've used it a bunch. It's a weirdo though. It's a big block Chevy. It's 478 cubic inches. Now that's really strange, but regardless of that, it runs really well. It's got JE custom pistons for 12¼ to 1 compression. It's got Dart Pro 1 heads on it with 365cc inlet runners. It's topped by a Dart manifold and a Holley 1050 carb. But let's get into the meat of what you really care about on this engine. It has a Crane solid roller camshaft, and it is a no fooling cam. The duration at 50 thousandths tappet lift is 284 on the intake, 296 on the exhaust, and it's on a 112-degree lobe separation angle. It's gonna make about 850 horsepower, and it's gonna scream to 7,500 RPM. It's a great platform to find out if we're gonna be able to adjust our lash and learn if maybe we picked the right camshaft or maybe we didn't. So we're gonna slap the valve cover on and hang this thing on the dyno and find out facts. All right, I think we know what this engine does. We've run it a jillion times at this point.
A few laps.
It does a lot.
Has a lot of laps on it, but I don't know, different weather, different day. Right now you've got the lash at 21 to 22 thousandths.
Both intake and exhaust.
And that's the hot number.
Hot relative to what we test at. We're testing at about 130, 35 degrees.
Okay, yeah. Different than room temperature cold.
Yes.
So how much does it grow on an engine like this?
From like a 75 or 80 degree day, it's probably gonna grow 4 thousandths. If we were to lash them at 150 or 60 degrees, I'm seeing about 3 thousandths difference from 19 to 21, 22.
Okay. So you would cold lash this at like 18, 18, and then it'll stretch
19,
to 21, 22,
Yeah.
that neighborhood. Okay, cool. Let's show them again what this engine makes for power. Performed as expected.
That was a good number.
Yeah. So there's our baseline, pretty much as expected. 633.6 pound-feet of torque at 5,700 RPM and 854.1 horsepower up at 7,500. Now, it needs to be noted that we're only running this engine to 7,500. Honestly, we think that it makes peak power at 76, 77.
Yeah.
But we're really worried about the valve control with no shaft rockers, no stud girdle, and stainless steel valves that are probably 2,350, like big old valves, too.
Or, yeah, what?
So
I was thinking 2,300, 2,350. They're probably 2,350.
that's our baseline. What's our first step in testing lash?
I don't know. Maybe just leave it alone because it's so good the way it is.
Yeah.
I'm afraid that anything we do is going to make less power. I'm thinking the kind of procedure we'll work on is we will go tighter intake and looser intake. Decide which of those two is better, and then leave that there where it's at, and then go to the exhaust and kind of do the same thing and just look for both, you know, whichever combination of those are the best.
So you're gonna go put it tighter intake right now. What number?
I'm not the kind of guy that's going to go out there and do 2,000s. That's not going to show us any trends. I'm going to take a swing at it, go like 8 or 10.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Makes sense.
that leaves us with 10.
My only concern is going the other side to do, you know, if we're going to do,
That loose.
yeah, getting
Gets
it
kinda
over
rackety.
30,
Yeah.
34 thousandths. You know, I think that maybe we do 10 and 10 each way.
So we're gonna go out there, and I say we, I mean Lightning Lash Brule, who's gonna handle this in like a flash. But we're gonna set the intake valves at 12 thousandths of an inch, closing them up about 10, which means we're gonna be adding a little bit of lift microscopically and a little bit of duration to the intake side.
About every 6 thousandths is going to be about 1 degree in duration.
So we're not making huge changes here, but we're seeing trends, hopefully. Dulcich disagrees.
What do you mean?
Well, you were telling me off camera that you didn't believe that the lash was going to make a bit of difference because it's in the ramp of the lobe.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see the results because every time I've tried it, it seems like looser was better than tighter.
I mean, like I say, it's unique to every engine, so
Right. Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't matter, but I've seen as much as 30 getting
But
the lash correct.
Like I said, I really want to see what this is going to do on this
So
engine.
it's your job and mine to go pull valve covers.
Okay, let's go.
The procedure I use is adjust the intake valve when the exhaust valve is opening and adjust the exhaust when the intake is about half closed. Really, that's nothing more than a visual reference from outside the engine, since I can't see the camshaft, to tell me that the valve I'm adjusting is absolutely on the heel of the camshaft. It's the way I was taught. It works on every 4-stroke engine. You can follow the firing order sequence if you choose, or you can just run down the row. But as long as you keep your eye on that cylinder, then it's the same on every 4-stroke.
Done in record time. I think that was about 8 minutes, start to finish, which is good because we have to do it like 5 more times. Now we've got the lash 10 thousandths of an inch tighter, theoretically adding just a hair lift and a hair of duration.
Only on the intake, right?
Only on the intake, right.
Okay. Well,
Steve Brule,
let's see what it does.
it's all yours. Okay, to really know what happened there, we're gonna have to overlay the 2 curves and inspect very, very closely because it's not much. This is all the same. So I'm gonna say that did nothing that we care about. Do you agree with that?
I agree.
Yeah, nothing we care about.
Definitely didn't help it, I can tell you that.
Yeah, so I think we're gonna go back out there now and loosen the intake rather than tightening it. We're gonna go 10 thousandths looser, which brings us to a lash hot of 32 thousandths. All right, here we go.
This looks like we may be doing just some fine points. I mean, valve lash adjustments. Generally, the camshaft manufacturer will give you a spec, you set it to that spec, and you forget about it. But how do you know if that spec is going to give you the most power? And really, that's what we're after here. On the dyno, we have the opportunity to test what is best. Does it want to be looser? Does it want to be tighter? The lash loop will tell us what the engine really wants.
Now we've gone to loose lash on the intake only. We got 32 thousandths, and so that means we're going to cut a tiny, tiny bit of lift and a tiny bit of duration.
Dulcich had an idea of why he thought this might be better.
Well, I mean, the early part of the ramp is called the lash ramp, where it goes up really mildly as far as the cam profile to take up the lash and not do it too violently. As you open up the lash, you're getting higher up on that lash ramp and you're getting closer to the actual opening ramp or the flank of the cam, so you're gonna have a quicker valve action off the seat.
Just
setting.
like looking at duration at 50 thousandths tap at lift versus 200. I mean, obviously it's not that extreme with the lash, but you're saying it's hitting later on the lobe, and so the lobe is more aggressive at that point.
But it's going to be harder on parts too.
Yeah,
right?
right.
Theoretically, it should still be soft enough where it'll be fine at this setting. You're 32?
Yeah, 32.
Okay, let's find out. Surprising. Wow.
Yeah.
Wait till you see these numbers. Pretty impressive. So what we saw as the power was going by is that it made a lot more power with the loose lash on the intake. So less duration ended up making more horsepower, 860.5 horsepower, the best we've ever seen out of this engine.
Oh.
And look at that, it absolutely helped it everywhere, and peak torque of 647.9. Best it's ever done, but the real story is look what it did everywhere in the curve. And not surprisingly, it's better down low than it is up top because we reduced duration. Wow.
But it really came in on the roll in.
Well, I mean, I think it's pointing us in a direction in the RPM range we're running, and I think it might be saying we picked a little big.
So this was 284 at 50. It's telling us we want like 278? Or do you think it's telling us we want 283?
You know, the best cam guys I know will look you straight in the face and go, this should do this.
Right?
There's no one answer. I mean, we'd have to
Right.
run 3 of them through there and look for the best. That's why we test.
Right now, I'm saying this cam's the right cam with 32
With the
degrees. 32,
But it might be the way that it's
valve.
opening the valve now.
yeah.
But can we drive it around, race it at 32 thousandths lash, or is it
yeah.
going to beat itself up? It's going to beat the tip of the valve. It's going to beat the axle and the roller.
I think it's okay.
I think you'd have to look at the specific lobe and find out what's happening at that point when it opens to see how bad it's slapping it around.
Steve-O, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but old school mechanical cams, like back in the day, it was not unusual to be 30, 32 thousandths as recommended.
And a lot of that, they were flat tappets.
Flat tappets, yeah.
And they...
Back in your day.
Oh, I will. Wait till we're
You
done.
can reach me from here.
Get off my lawn.
Right.
Yeah, you know, the old Duntop 3030s, a lot of that stuff. But I will
Yeah.
tell you today, I still see a number of camshafts come in here that have lash settings hot in the 28 and 32 range.
That's why I'm not afraid of it beating stuff up, because it is not a really uncommon setting.
I think we can all agree, wow.
Yeah.
And so the next thing that we're going to go do is tighten up the exhaust lash.
This is a really, really
This is all-
educational test.
It's way better than I
because
expected.
look at how much torque is gained right there at the bottom of the curve.
It's huge.
Nobody would expect that from, you know, a lash setting. This is the right test engine for this. It's got a really wide RPM range. It's high RPM. It's got a big cam, so it may be more sensitive to a lash adjustment than.
But whether it's a percentage or a number, it all matters. Everything that we're doing to this thing. Look, we started out, you know, a while back working on this thing, and it was what, an 800 horsepower engine? And we haven't done a lot of trickery here, and we're at 860. We haven't changed the camshaft.
Right.
We haven't done rock arms. We haven't done any real hard parts. We've done kind of like oil pans and vacuum pumps and the stuff that a guy's going to do,
how
picking
you
away at
whittle
stuff.
away at it, yeah.
How much does 60 horsepower cost if you just go try and buy that?
Yeah.
I think we bargained hunted here, you know, as far as finding that kind of power.
So next up, we're going to go out there and tighten the lash on the exhaust side. And obviously, we're leaving the intake right where it is.
We are.
All right, ready? Another 8 minutes, more power. Here we go again, this time tight lash on the exhaust. And of course, we left the intake where it was. Go. So on that pull, we made 861 horsepower and we lost a little bit of torque, 643.7. So net, it did nothing. Let's see if it actually lost a little. Yeah, it lost a little bit in the mid-range. Yeah. Tight lash exhaust sucked. We're gonna move on to loosening it up. Ready?
Okay, we're well practiced this now.
Yes, we are. Okay, I can't be disappointed at this point, but what's your call? Loose lash on the exhaust, better or worse?
At least better down low.
It's going to be better everywhere.
Okay, I hope so. We're gonna see 865 horsepower-wise?
I think we'll break 860 is my prediction.
We already have.
Have we?
860.5, and we ran 861 just after that.
Okay, we'll have to wait and see the number, right?
Yep.
That's a tough number to beat. But
Yeah.
All right, Brule, do that thing you do. Okay, will it be better? Will it be worse? We always have the knee jerk of wanting to talk about it, but you gotta look at the actual data. That says 855 horsepower, down 5, 649.7 pound-feet of torque, up microscopically. How about lay it over and see what we did? So what we're looking at here is the red line is what we deemed earlier today to be our best pass yet. It was the one where we had loose lash only on the intake side. The black line is the last test that we made where it's still loose on the intake, but also loose on the exhaust. And it's interesting because it actually ended up making more low end loosening up the exhaust and not as much up at the top.
This doesn't surprise me. I mean, shortening up the exhaust some, you need the additional exhaust for engine speed, and we're revving this thing up there pretty good.
Yeah.
If this were a 7,000 RPM combination, that probably wouldn't be there and wouldn't matter. We would never see it. But it picked up the bottom, which is kind of...
Yeah.
But then if you were drag racing this engine, you've got at least a 5500 converter, and that really doesn't matter. So I think bottom line is it doesn't care about the exhaust lash. I mean, it does tell us that the engine at very low speeds prefers less duration on the exhaust side, but not up at the top.
Yeah, you know, it leads me to want to try a camshaft that's very dissimilar to what it is, work on the intake side some, but widen the lobe separation a little bit. Try and help pick up this engine speed some more once that rocker arm thing you do is gonna happen, and we get some shaft rockers on it, some other stuff, we can rev it up to 8,000.
Because this thing's on a 112, you're saying you would like put the cam at a 114 lobe separation angle?
Let it run
and let it
there.
eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is good, because I was gonna ask you guys what you would conclude from this.
I don't know.
Where do you go from here? Do you change the
Well,
camshaft?
I don't know. I mean, it depends on where you're at. I mean, if this was mine and I had to have that cam, I mean, going out and buying another cam, whereas I'm getting pretty good performance out of it as it is, I'd probably just optimize the lash and call it a day.
So that's the practical side, which is a
Yeah.
great argument. Let's say that you're not spending money and you wanted to put a different cam in it. Would you, or
Oh,
would
I
you
know
call
exactly.
this cam, good?
I know exactly what I would do.
What?
I would ask Brule.
Okay,
And then I
Brule.
would just widen the SEP a little bit, maybe
Yeah.
add a couple of degrees of exhaust duration, shorten up the intake, and see what it does.
Exactly, because it's going to like that longer exhaust for engine speed as well as the nitrous. So that's a win-win if you're headed
The
that
nitrous.
direction. Oh, you hadn't planned on that yet?
Duh.
No, that's done. So
Right.
I think what Steve's onto has a lot of merit to it. Just
The valve
opening
opening
quicker.
rate.
By today's standards, we are not pushing lift at all. We're below 800.
I know.
Guys don't do stuff below 900 anymore.
What's wrong with us? Yeah. That was really interesting.
good.
That was
Good
cool.
stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
And more power than we've ever had
Ever.
from that motor. Dude, this thing just made its personal best record power for 0 simoleons.
I know, and that's always an accomplishment. And you know what? It speaks to something that's very important to me, and that's like fine-tuning and adjustment. Why does one guy's motor with the same parts run way harder than somebody else's?
Yeah, we found a lot of power on this thing. I mean, 25 pound-feet way down low.
Yeah.
And 8 up top and better everywhere in the curve for literally not $1, which is really cool. But we learned something about how our camshaft duration, could be improved with the different lash and everything. Would you ever bother to change that with rocker arm ratio instead of with lash. Like this thing has a 1.7 rocker on it. If it liked more duration, would you put a 1.8 rocker on it?
I would consider it if I was going to replace the whole Valvetrain anyway. In the case of this engine, maybe we want 8,000 RPM instead of 7,500. Maybe
Well,
we
we
want
do.
shaft rockers instead of stud mounted. And at that point, well, the 1.8 will be awfully tempting.
I feel there's one last really important point that I need to make for the audience though. What we just showed you is a procedure that you can use on your engine. And you can do it not just on a dyno, but also at the drag strip.
Oh yeah.
The key is you don't want to just take the lash numbers that we just learned on this engine and apply them to your engine. It really is specific combination to combination.
Oh yeah, your results will vary. That's the right lash for this combination, but your engine might want something completely different.
The stuff that we show on Engine Masters can be applied to any engine. As I mentioned earlier, you can do this with an overhead cam 4-cylinder and it still works.
Or a Jeep engine.
See? Engine Masters, improving your life every time.
Poet, man. You may be good at setting lash.
But you're like Longfellow.
Hey, in another life, buddy, I would just do that. Never have oil on my hands, wouldn't have these sore knees, wouldn't have the arthritis in the elbows.
You could live in the 60s and hang at the coffee shops and call yourself a beatnik.
I could be like at Haight-Ashbury